Disclosure: this video is sponsored by the free-to-play game World of Warships. Thank you to the forum Wehrgeschichte Oberösterreich for inviting me.
Today we look at Germany's forgotten hand grenade, the Eihandgranate 39, literally egg hand grenade 39. When one thinks about German hand grenades for the First or Second World War, nearly everyone thinks about the stick grenade or potato masher, as discussed in a previous video. As such, one could think that the Eihandgranate was probably a less important second-tier hand grenade. Well, according to production statistics during the war, the egg hand grenade was produced almost 9 million times more than the famous stick grenade. As such, let us take a closer look at this forgotten German hand grenade.
But before that, a short word about the sponsor of this video, the free-to-play game World of Warships, which is available on PC and consoles as well. Fight it out in 12 vs 12 arenas. Download World of Warships for free. Just click on the first link in the description. This also helps the channel. Be sure to use the promo code BRAVO during registration to receive the following freebies: 500 doubloons, 1.5 million credits, 7 days of premium account time, and a free ship. World of Warships is constantly updated and receives new ships, cosmetics, and themed updates like Megadeth or ISO Lane. The game features more than 40 maps with dynamic weather and great effects. The various ship classes allow for very different approaches. Want to be fast and sneaky? Use your destroyer and deliver a fan of torpedoes. Want to stay behind but dish out a lot of damage? Carriers are your thing. There are also battleships, cruisers and submarines. In total, the game features more than 600 ships, including the Bismarck, the Yamato, the Enterprise and HMS Prince of Wales.
As you can clearly see, the Eihandgranate is far more compact. As such, many more of these could be carried in pockets and bags. Of course, the stick grenade could be more easily put between the belt and uniform, in the boot or in a webbing couple. So depending on the situation, one could be more practical than the other.
In terms of weight, the egg hand grenade is about 50% lighter than the stick grenade. Yet in terms of damage and other features, both grenades were similar. Unlike the stick grenade, which was introduced long before the war, the Eihandgranate was introduced in April 1940, so shortly before the invasion of France. Most contemporary German documents and manuals make little distinction between the two grenades, besides adding the fuse and minor differences during operations. An exception is from the Army Regulation 130/2A for the Infantry Company from 1941, which notes, when fighting in the woods, often the shallow throw with the egg hand grenade between the trunks has good effect. For more comparisons, check out my previous video that looks on why the stick grenade is so famous while the egg grenade is almost forgotten. Some of you that are familiar with other hand grenades might notice that this grenade is rather smooth outside, so without patterns like the US Mark IIA-1 grenade or the Soviet RPD-33 grenade, as you can see here. There's a reason for this, since the latter two grenades were optimized or focused on dealing damage with fragmentation effect, whereas the German grenade at first used mainly the blast effect. So what is the difference? Well, the radius of effective fragment damage, although target dependent, usually exceeds considerably the radius of effective blast damage in an airburst. Herein lies the principal advantage of a fragmentation payload. It can afford a greater miss distance and still remain effective because its attenuation is lower. What does this mean in combat? Well, simply a hand grenade with blast effect is more suited for attacking due to its very small range, since if you're attacking, you are less likely in cover, or at least in a worse cover than the defender. Additionally, a blast effect can often stun and suppress. To quote a contemporary German handbook for reserve officers about when the grenades should be used in combat: the hand grenade is a close combat device particularly useful against targets behind cover, which cannot be engaged by light machine gun and rifle. In the attack, it is thrown immediately before the assault. In defense, it is used for assault defense. Excellent ordnance in trench warfare. Meanwhile, a grenade with fragmentation effect is more suited for the defense, since you don't really care about those fragments if they fly around outside your trench. As the distinction is often made in calling them offensive and defensive grenades, whereas the latter ones generally are fragmentation grenades. An example for an offensive grenade would be the US Mark IIIA-1. Later on, the Germans added fragmentation rings for stick grenades and a fragmentation sleeve to the egg hand grenade. Fleischer notes, In the experience reports of the troops of the field army who came in contact with the Red Army's hand grenades on the Eastern Front, the low fragmentation effect of the German hand grenades in comparison with the Russian was repeatedly criticized. The development of fragmentation rings was commissioned. In March 1943, fragmentation rings were introduced for the stick hand grenades. 1/3 of them were delivered with such rings. It was specifically noted that these grenades should only be used in the defense. In September 1944, fragmentation sleeves followed for the air hand grenade. The same announcement noted that for the air hand grenades, 30% would be provided with fragmentation sleeves. Additionally, it was noted that the stick grenades would be provided with fragmentation rings in 50% of the cases, so the ratio was increased. Sadly, I don't have any fragmentation ring or sleeves, so here's a description for the sleeve from the original document. The fragmentation jacket for air hand grenades consists of 2 iron shells with notches, which are placed around the air hand grenade and closed by bayonet latches. When looking at the documents from 1943 and 1944, something interesting became apparent. In 1943, the deadly range for the fragmentation is given with up to 30 meters, whereas in the 1944 document it is noted that the fragmentation range was above 100 meters. This is not a contradiction since the longer range does not come with a deadly in front of it. I don't know the reasons for the change in the wording, but I guess the deadly was not communicated well in the field and as such various injuries happened. By searching for information in US Army sources, I also looked into the tactical and technical trends. I found that the fragmentation ring for the stick grenade is mentioned, but I could not find a mention about the fragmentation sleeve for the air hand grenade. There's a second variant mentioned in the text and as a photo, but the description doesn't make any sense to Andrew, who is a native speaker, nor me, and the photo clearly shows air hand grenades without a fragmentation sleeve. So perhaps the US Army intelligence had an incomplete and or inaccurate information about the Eihandgranate, or did not communicate this information, or Andrew and I missed something. So let us take a look inside. For this we use an illustration. As you can see, it's a rather simple construction, particularly compared to the Stielhandgranate 24. A large part is covered by the explosive material. At the top is the fuse. At this point there was a thread to mount a screw in the fuse, and here's the detonator. In terms of technical data, the weight of the Eihandgranate grenade depended on the explosives used. In 1940, the minimum weight was given with 225 grams and a maximum of 298 grams. Fleischer notes that the grenade with a fragmentation sleeve had a weight of 425 grams, yet not with which base variant. The dimension with the fuse and the bulge is given with 100 times 61.5 millimeters. The time of delay for the fuse was 4.5 seconds plus minus 0.2 seconds. So the same value as for the stick grenade. The effective range without the fragmentation sleeve is noted at 10 to 12 meters and above 100 meters with the fragmentation sleeve. Additionally, one 1943 source notes that with the fragmentation sleeve the deadly range is up to 30 meters. The data on the throwing range is of course dependent on the thrower. Various sources note that the stick and Eihandgranate grenade were generally similar. As such, here are the ranges provided for the stick grenade. A primary source from 1940 notes about 40 meters, whereas Fleischer notes about 25 to 30 meters on average. I could only find a secondary source that gave the range for the Eihandgranate grenade. It noted 25 meters. As usual, take those values with a grain of salt, especially since I asked a German combat engineer and he noted that according to his experience, grenades with sticks can be thrown farther. Let us look at the production numbers. Be aware we only look at the production numbers from 1939 to 1945 for the regular versions of the stick and Eihandgranate grenade, so no smoke or other variants. As you can see, in 1939 no Eihandgranate grenades were produced, since it was introduced in 1940. Yet in the introduction year almost 5 million Eihandgranate grenades were produced, so more than stick grenades in 1939. But already in 1941 the number of Eihandgranate grenades produced was double the amount of the stick grenades produced. For 1942 the situation is similar. Then in 1943 there's a massive spike in grenade production, and the difference between the stick grenade and Eihandgranate grenade production is far lower than before in relative terms. For 1944 the numbers are almost identical, the same for 1945. So what is the reason for this? Well, at first one might assume it was due to the introduction of the more streamlined Stielgranate 43. But the name is misleading here, since according to Fleischer it was only introduced in April 1944. Hence it is not really possible that the output could be ramped up for 1943 to the switch to this model. Yet there were more changes happening. In May 1942, Hitler had ordered a massive expansion of the hand grenade production. Probably most importantly were the structural changes following the ammunition crisis in 1939-40 and the high priority for ammunition production in 1942. At the end of the war there was an emergency program that I discussed on my second channel. It noted that only one type of hand grenade should be produced, yet 5 million per month. Yet according to Fleischer, the situation at the end of the war was quite different, since a large number of different hand grenade models were produced from all different kinds of materials, like glass and even concrete.
Now these production numbers clearly raise one question: why is the egg hand grenade basically forgotten, whereas the less produced stick grenade is so omnipresent? Well, this question, among other aspects like a comparison between the two grenades, is covered in my previous video.
To summarize, although nearly everyone associates the stick grenade with the German army in the First and Second World War, for the Second World War it is rather apparent from the production numbers that the egg hand grenade was about as important, if not more important. In terms of performance, both grenades were similar, yet the egg hand grenade was until 1944 far easier to produce. Ironically, the production peak of the stick grenade was in 1943, so before the simpler stick grenade was introduced. Although the 1943 in the name is a bit misleading since it was introduced in 1944. Don't forget to download World of Warships for free, just click on the first link in the description. This also helps the channel. Be sure to use the promo code BRAVO during registration to receive the following freebies: 500 doubloons, 1.5 million credits, 7 days of premium account time, and a free ship. I hope you learned something new. Thank you to the free-to-play game World of Warships for sponsoring this video. Thank you to Andrew for reviewing the script. Thank you to the Forum Wehrgeschichte Oberösterreich in Ebelsberg for the equipment.